How y'all doing? Yeah, me too. I have gone through all of the stages of grief since Wednesday morning, repeatedly, out of order, over and over again. And wow, not not really what I was expecting the outcome of the election to be. But we can wallow in being sad about what is, or we can accept what is and move forward. Because being in denial about what is keeps you stuck. And as much as many of us would have liked a different result, the result is what it is. I have made a playlist on Spotify because music is healing, and I've made a Spotify playlist to help me get through this. I've posted it on my Facebook page. If you're on Facebook and you're not following me, what are you even doing? It's really easy. You just look up Mosaic in Progress, and then there's me. Just give it a like, and you can see updates on when I post new episodes. Sometimes I post poetry on there. Sometimes I reshare things from other pages that I think are important. Sometimes I post Spotify playlists. Um, so go follow me on there if you're on Facebook. And if you're on Instagram, it's just at Mosaic in Progress. Super easy to remember. Um, I have a lot of compounded emotions about the election result. I mentioned on a previous recent episode that I am coming up on the 7th anniversary of being raped in my own bed. And even though I reported it and filed charges, they chose not to pursue investigating the case or filing charges against him. Shortly after it happened, I saw a psychiatrist, and she told me, and this was late November 2017 when I was raped. She said in the last year, she had seen more patients coming in with new reports of rape and sexual assault than she had in the entire rest of her 15 plus year combined. She attributed it to Donald Trump, and there were many others around that time, prominent political figures or celebrities, public figures, who were in the public eye with accusations of sexual assault and rape, and they got away with it. And she said, all these guys are seeing that all these public figures, all these men getting away with it, and so it has made it socially acceptable to rape women because they see they can get away with it. And with that anniversary coming up in a few weeks, and then this happening and the reminder of it, and hearing these reports, I'm hearing reports of boys in school grabbing girls, people on college campuses, out in public with men assaulting women and saying, your body, my choice. And the level of fear and terror that puts into me, I I can't even put into words. I almost didn't go out with my friend last night. She'd come to stay with me from out of town to go to a concert. And I was filled with so much fear about something happening to me again. I almost didn't go out with her. And then I remembered I don't live my life like that anymore. And I decided a long time ago that I was not going to live my life being controlled by fear. So I went anyway, and it was fine, and we had a great time. But I I want to address something because I think what I said in my last episode can be taken differently than it was meant. And so I want to talk a little bit more about it, and I want to clarify it. So I see a lot of posts on social media that are people saying things like, we can have different opinions and still be friends, and then people countering that with opinions are about things like food and clothes. They're not about, whether or not somebody should be allowed to exist, or if they should have rights. And I don't want what I said to be mistaken for me saying, well, you just got to be friends with those people. Let me clarify exactly what I mean. And I'm going to clarify it by talking about my journey from being a right-wing extremist to who I am now. I did not change my mind about politics and religion and even all of the racist, misogynistic beliefs that I had from people calling me a bigot or telling me that I hated women or I hated black people or I was a terrible person. In fact, that served to entrench me even more in my beliefs every time someone did that. I did not change my mind from people choosing to not talk about the difficult things with me or around me. My mind didn't change overnight. It was a process of several years. A big part of it started because I started realizing that the people who were different from me were not the evil villains I had made them out to be in my head, that we had more in common than I thought. And when I realized that and that I could have civil discourse with these people, then I started having discourse with these people and became curious about the way that they thought. And I'm not saying that every single person who thinks differently than you or that you know who thinks differently than you is going to be like that. Some people are very closed-minded. Some people aren't open to change. Some people aren't open to having their values challenged. They are beholden to them in a way that they would be unable to change them and continue on with their lives. What I am saying is not just be friends with them and you can just put your differences aside. No, they are actively supporting a person who wants to take away our rights and our lives in some cases. That's not anything to brush under the carpet or whatever. What I am saying is that the crux of the problem with the entire ideology behind the MAGA movement is that people who are different from me are dangerous. And you can argue a whole lot about the individual aspects of it, whether it's racism or the misogyny or just the entire xenophobia or the homophobia or any of the different aspects of it, but the entirety of it boils down to people who are different from me are dangerous to me and my way of life. And I can certainly see how you can make the argument with Project 2025 and all of that that's coming underway, that on the other side of the aisle, that might actually be true. It's always possible that it's true. It's always possible that it's true. But as my sociology professor taught us, stereotyping leads to genocide. I remember taking that class, and I was so far right wing, I refused to learn anything in that class because I was so angry that I was having to take it. I was very, very, very deeply in Stockholm Syndrome. This was maybe 5 years after my dad had beat me with a 2 of 6. And you may think that's not really related to this topic today. No, it is, because when my dad beat me with a 2 of 6, I became so determined to be whatever he wanted me to be, which meant believing whatever he said, which meant fully embracing every single part of it and thinking like him as much as I could so that he wouldn't kill me. Because I truly thought he was going to kill me that day. So, about 5 years of that, just really steeping myself in everything that he thought or read or believed, hanging on every single word that he said, I was a raging, xenophobic, internalized, misogynistic piece of shit. And I can say that looking back with love for myself, because I did what I had to do to survive. That doesn't make me proud of it. It doesn't make me think it was okay. It was the only option that I could see for myself at the time. And I can look back and see there were other options, but it was the only one that I could see at the time. So, my sociology professor was from Iran, and he was Muslim, and he was very vocal about being from Iran and being Muslim. And this was late 2000s, like 2008, 2009. I had so much disdain for this man. I sat up front in his class, and I argued with him every single class. I was that student. I was always difficult. And he had so much patience for me. And the only thing that I remember from his class was the stereotyping leads to genocide talk. And if you don't know about stereotyping leads to genocide, I am not going to spoon feed it for you. I want you to go research it. Go check out a sociology book at the library. It's in most of them. Learn about how stereotyping leads to genocide. It doesn't matter what your specific issue is. Placing people in a box with a label on it and refusing to look at them as people is the entire problem in this country. You're not going to change that by doing the same thing back to them. You're not. Now, does that mean lay down and let them run over you? Absolutely not. Does that mean don't bring it up and just try to be on civil terms with them and have friendly conversations? No. One of my best friends several years ago, after her divorce, was seeing this guy, and this guy was a piece of shit who was just using her, and I knew that up front. I could see all the signs, and I told her up front, this guy's a player. He's just using you. She didn't want to listen. And he continued to act as players do. And she continued to call and text me, all upset over how he was treating her and asking for advice. And I kept telling her, you need to leave him. You need to cut it off. You need to end it. And I reached a point where I'd had enough. And I said, either accept that he's going to treat you like shit, and this is where the relationship is, or leave him. But this complaining about how he's treating you when he has shown you consistently over and over this pattern of behavior that he's not going to prioritize you and he's not going to treat you right, while continuing to stay with him and allow him access to you, is just self-sabotage. And I'm not going to listen to you complain about it anymore. Either accept it or leave. But we're not doing this anymore. Some people might say that was cruel. I think it's one of the most loving things that I ever did to her. Love does not always look like hugs and kisses and warm dinners around the table. Sometimes love is telling someone they're wrong. Sometimes love is calling someone out on their bullshit. I didn't tell her she was stupid. I didn't tell her she was a whore. I didn't tell her she was worthless. I didn't tell her I didn't want to be around her anymore. You can tell people what they're saying or thinking or doing is harmful without calling them names, without dehumanizing them, without deciding that they are other and separate from you. It's really easy to just separate yourself from those who are different say, well, I'm not going to talk to them anymore. I'm not being around them anymore. They're dangerous. Maybe they are. Have you given them an opportunity to hear you? Or have you decided that just because they voted for someone who is objectively a terrible person, that they're not worth talking to? Please understand, I'm not saying you have to keep these people in your inner circle and be best friends with them. I'm asking if you have had a conversation. Because all politics is local. And it all boils down to, everything comes down to you and your family and your neighbors. It all ultimately boils down to that. So what are you doing in your corner of the world? Are you calling everyone who voted for him Nazis? And on that, I've heard Donald Trump compared to Hitler multiple times, and it's not an unfair comparison completely. However, I think comparing Donald Trump to Hitler is an insult to Hitler. Because Hitler had a very specific agenda with very specific motives for a very specific moral reason. Now, I'm not saying he was a moral person. I'm not saying that any of it was good. But he had a specific set of morals that drove everything that he did. He thought he was bringing about the new age, the Aryan race, whatever. Donald Trump only cares about Donald Trump and maintaining his power and wealth. Everything that he says and does are manipulative tactics to very scared demographic of people so that they will keep him in money and power. If you haven't figured that out yet, pay more attention. If you thought it was anything else, you weren't paying attention. Pay better attention. Do better. I'm calling you out. Donald Trump doesn't have some overarching agenda against certain groups of people. He just wants money and power, and he will say what or do whatever he has to maintain that. And he knows that his base are people who are easily manipulated and people who are very scared. And they are mostly scared of losing their way of life. And they attribute that to others because that's the easy thing to do. Stereotyping and xenophobia is the easy default. So all he has to do is spout racist bullshit, and everyone thinks that he's going to save them. That's not his overarching policy. He just wants money and power. There is not a moral compass in that man's body pointing in any direction toward anything. I have struggled a lot. I have several friends who, and they're not my inner circle best friends, but they're people who I considered good friends. who made posts after the election publicly stating that they voted for him. And I have one friend in particular who made a post saying that Donald Trump ruined his life in his last year of presidency. And he couldn't stand him. And he voted for him because of all of the other people who would be supporting him, his cabinet, etc. And I found that to be absolutely heartbreaking, that you would vote for someone who ruined your life, someone who you consider to be a horrible person because of the people in the cabinet. That you would vote for a convicted felon, for a rapist, for a racist. And this is a person of color. To vote for someone like that because thought him and his cabinet would be good for the economy. That is an immoral way to live your life. To vote against your conscience for financial gain. And the delusions I've seen of so many people who say, I don't think he's a racist. I mean, you can listen to anything he said. And granted, I do think that a lot of the things that he says are said just to rile up his base. But he did say them. And he has talked about his policies of deportation, and you can't look at anything that he says and come away with any opinion other than that he is a racist. Or he's just really good at pretending to be one. And it's disheartening to see that kind of delusion from saying that he's a Christian to saying he's not racist to it's like the people who voted for him weren't even listening to him. And people don't understand why anyone feels afraid. Which is really ironic because the right wing is the epitome of freak out if a Republican doesn't get elected. I mean, they're the epitome of it. I remember being absolutely terrified when Obama got elected that there was going to be like a civil war breakout in the country over him trying to get rid of Christianity and turn us into a communist nation. I mean, legit, I was mentally preparing myself for it because that's what everyone talked about. And the cognitive dissonance of the complete just dissociation from reality and lack of empathy for anyone else, it's mind-blowing to me. However, living in fear is the worst way to live. And I said before, years ago, I made a commitment to myself that I would no longer be driven by fear. If I don't do something because I'm afraid to do it or I hesitate, my I stopped, I'm not going to do this because I'm afraid, well, then I have to do it. That's my policy for my life now. Not anything that, like, there's a legitimate reason of a legitimate danger, a threat that's posed. Like, I'm not going to jump into a pit of venomous snakes. That's an obvious danger that's there. I'm not talking about things like that. I'm not, like not going out last night. I was like, well, now I have to because I'm scared to do it. I don't allow myself to be led by fear anymore. And it's the most free I have ever felt in my life to look fear straight in the face and say, you don't own me. It doesn't matter what's going on in the world, you always have that option. It doesn't matter how bad things are. It doesn't matter how ugly they are. And it doesn't matter how scared you are. You always have the option to say to fear, you don't own me. And get the hell on with your life. One thing that I want to address, because this is something that we really, really, really need to work on going forward, especially over the next 4 years. We have got, as women, I'm speaking specifically to women right now. The rest of you can silently listen in. We have got to get rid of our fucking internalized misogyny. It is destroying us, and it is destroying the country. Look at how many women voted for Donald Trump. What the fuck? Sisters, what the fuck? You voted for the man who made sure to take away your reproductive rights. You voted for the man who is publicly known for saying when you're famous, you can do whatever you want to women, just grab them by the pussy. You voted for the man who said, I love women. I'm going to protect women, whether they like it or not. Sis, what are you doing? What are you doing? That's another subject. You can deal with that later on your own. Right now, I want to talk about why we as women hate ourselves and other women. We are so fucking terrified in 2024 still of not having a man. And even those of us who don't want a man, we still treat other women as competition. Even if we have made the conscious decision we don't want to get married, or at least not to a man, we treat other women as competition and we talk about them in misogynistic terms. I saw a post, it's been several years ago, about Kellyanne Conway. We remember her. There's a lot of things you can say about Kellyanne Conway. Bad about Kellyanne Conway. This post had nothing to do with any of the things you can objectively say bad about her and her role in the first Trump presidency. It said she looks like a dog. She looks like a dog. Now, I want to know why it was pertinent to call her ugly. Why did that need to be said? Why did it matter? Why does it matter if she's ugly? Why does it matter? Why do we talk about, well, you can tell she paid for those tits? Why do we talk about Botox and lip injections and dyed hair to cover the grays? Do you know why women do these things? Because we are told that unless we are young and pretty, attractive to men, and available for use by them, we don't have any worth. And so we view ourselves in that way. We don't usually admit it. We don't think of it in those terms, but we look at ourselves and say, oh, I'm ugly because I've gotten fat, or my boobs aren't big enough, or I have wrinkles, or I have gray hair, or my lips aren't full enough. And so we mutilate our bodies and we inject poison into ourselves so that we can fit some fucking patriarchal standard of beauty so we can feel like we're worth something. And then we're still not good enough because the women around us snicker and judge us for what we did so that we could still feel like we were worth something. Look, she's fake. Look how fake she is with all of that. We refuse to get along with the women around us. Oh, the stereotype of women being catty and women not being able to get along, it's all because of internalized misogyny. It's because we view each other as competition instead of sisters. We have to work on that. We have to stop it. We have to make peace with the women around us. Because if things do get as bad as we're terrified they're going to get, you're going to need your sisters. You're going to need the women around you. And how are you going to have that happen if you've got feuds going on with everybody? So let's do better. Let's work on that. Let us be kinder to one another and to ourselves, because everything is a reflection of you. What you see and judge in others is a reflection of you, and that applies to every single thing, even the one that you're really uncomfortable about that just popped into your head. Yep, that one too. The last thing that I want to mention, if you are very scared about what is going to happen going forward and the things that are going to change or that could change, I would encourage you to get involved in your local politics. Start going to your county commission meetings or your city council meetings. Go to your school board meetings. They're usually published in the paper, I believe. Find out what the what is it called? The legal publication for your area is. And that's the ones where they publish the police reports. So the legal publication for the area is required to give notice of county commission, city council, school board, etc., any government body meetings that are coming up. They're required to give notice of it, I think a week in advance. I think. It's a law. They have to give notice of it in advance. So start taking the paper and pay attention to when the meetings are coming up. Start going to those meetings. Run for your local office. The other thing is, if you're not registered to vote, get registered to vote. Even if you think that there's voter fraud or election tampering or whatever, juries are pulled from registered voters. And I'm going to teach you about something today called jury nullification. If you don't know what jury nullification is, buckle up. Let me tell you. Jury nullification is a term that is used to describe what happens basically when you get away with a crime. Now, not a crime necessarily like murder, but essentially what it is that if you are charged with a crime, let's just say, for example, a woman who is charged with murder because she had a miscarriage. and someone decided it was suspicious and she might have gotten an abortion. So the jury can find her not guilty, and essentially you've nullified the law. It's a little more complicated than that. I would encourage you to look it up and read about it. We have a form of nullification of laws that kind of works before the jury right now. We kind of have prosecutor nullification that's going on right now a lot in our country because prosecutors refuse to put rapists on trial because they think it's too hard of a case to prove and they're not sure they can win it. So they just don't put them on trial at all. So we have prosecutor nullification for sexual assault crimes. That happens right now. Nobody talks about that. I think we should talk about it more. But jury nullification, look it up, get registered to vote so you can be on a jury. And if you get called for jury duties, quit your bitching. Go. We need people on juries who are going to be fair and honest. This is a really scary time for a lot of people, myself included. I want you to be very gentle with yourself. I want you to give yourself a lot of love. Make sure you're taking care of yourself. Drink your water. Take your medicines or your vitamins. Get a little walk and some sunshine. Move your body. Don't let yourself get frozen. Do not let yourself get frozen. Do not let yourself get frozen. It's so easy to go into a freeze response right now because it feels so safe. Do not get frozen. Get up and fight back. Keep being your authentic self. Do not let them scare you into silence. Do not let them take away your light. Do not let them quell your magic. I love you all. We're going to get through this one way or another. But we're only going to get through it if we get through it together. Stand strong, but don't stand alone. Reach out and stand hand in hand with the person next to you. And join me next time on the podcast as we both continue to work on our mosaic in progress.